Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
And this is Fish Jelly.
And I've got a gasoline gut with a Vaseline mind.
Okay. How are you?
That's from La Tigra.
It's from what?
A song by La Tigra
Oh, God.
called Decepticon that I quite like. I'm fine. How are you?
Okay. My voice is still not 100%.
Polyps.
So yesterday was busy.
And today is busy.
Because you had to interview someone.
Oh, yes. And there was an office Christmas party as a cherry on top.
And a holiday Christmas party. I'm sipping on a hot beverage to keep my vocal cords moist.
Okay, Mariah.
Yeah, but that was fun. I didn't stay up. I mean, I sound like I partied hard, but that's residual sickness. I did not stay up that late, and I didn't drink that much.
It's okay. The world is not judging you. I interviewed the director of Gangubai Kathiawadi, and that went well.
Good.
At the Four Seasons.
Do you have anything else you want to say about that?
No. I mean, leading up to any of those things, I'm always anxious.
Yes, you are. We have the same conversations every time.
I know. But it's like the worst part is the waiting period right before, because once I start, it's go, and it almost always goes quite well.
Yes. And then the holiday party was fine.
And today I will be in voting jail because I have to vote for LAFCA, the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, and that takes a long time.
I was going to say about the holiday party, it seems like a lot of people, like daycare might be an issue. So, like significant others weren't brought so they can stay at home with children, and people seem preoccupied, and there weren't as many people as years past.
Well, a bunch of people have COVID.
And then people aren't well. Yeah, so it was an interesting situation. But I'm always happy to see people. Moving on, someone told us about R. Kelly having a new album.
God.
But I wanted to read, because apparently it's not, excuse me, a collection of new songs from R. Kelly that briefly appeared on Spotify and Apple Music on Friday was an unauthorized release of stolen music, the incarcerated R&B singer's attorney said. So that 13-track album is music of Mr. Kelly's that is in the hands of people who should not have it. The songs, all recorded before Kelly's imprisonment, appeared on the digital platforms Friday and were taken down within hours. So yeah.
He's gonna have to sell that album out of his trunk or have somebody.
But the album was the body of work was titled "I Admit It," which of course was like, what? With tracks like Air, I Found Love, and Freaky Sensation.
Okay.
But yeah, it sounds like those were not recorded while he was going through this criminal process.
Using the bars of the prison to...
But it's so sad. I mean, he was such a prolific,
I know,
like songwriter and music producer and recording artist.
And talented. Yeah, I mean...
And very talented. And I've seen him in concert twice, and I like his earlier music. He used to be part of a group, and he had more like up-tempo songs with that group that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, like when Bump and Grind came out, that was huge. And I mean, he has so many songs, and he's written songs for a lot of people.
Yeah.
He did a remix for Janet Jackson's Anytime, Any Place that I really like. He wrote for Michael Jackson, just like everybody. So to think that now he's in prison, broke, off of the crazy, wild, awful shit he did is like insane. But
here we are.
And I'm not defending R. Kelly. Moving on. I was going to say, people, whenever I mention I haven't seen a movie like Disney's Pinocchio, we get all of these messages about how can you have not seen. And I feel like I have to remind people that I was born in the late 70s. And as a child in the 80s, there were no streaming platforms. And particularly with Disney properties.
Disney used to be very hard to get a hold of. Yeah.
Disney was they only released like you can only buy the VHS cassettes.
And they
Like
were
they
expensive.
were super expensive. My family did not have money to spend $100 on a VHS cassette, and you couldn't even buy them when you wanted to. They came out in limited release, like seasonally.
And renting VHS was a treat. And my dad in particular was not interested in renting cartoons. So I mean they had to be I had to my mother would have to take me to the theater to see Disney usually, but I somehow I saw those. I don't remember how.
Yeah, I didn't see all the Disney movies, especially if they didn't come out. Well, even those, like I think I saw Little Mermaid once it came out on VHS because like one of the kids my mom babysat, they had it maybe. I don't know that my mom bought it. But other ones, I don't think. Maybe I saw Lion King and Aladdin because of the kids my mom watched,
Beauty
but
and the Beast I saw in the theater. Yeah.
yeah, but I definitely didn't see. The only thing I ever saw in a theater was Snow White, I recall. Like we went to a theater and that was playing. But yeah, access to certain films was not like it is today. So just to remind people. And also if it didn't come out during that time, there also wasn't the same access. Like as a 10 or 11-year-old, I wouldn't have known
Sure.
what was out to even ask if it came out before I was, so yeah, but I'm always surprised that people are so surprised. Like I just didn't have access to those things. There's nothing in the sorry to this man section, which can't be true.
Probably not
And
true.
then films released we didn't cover: Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
Yeah, a Shutter release, but I think it got a theatrical as well. You know, Joe Begos directed something. I saw Tiff's Midnight Madness. I don't know. I don't even remember the title of it, but I remember hating it. Something about I in the title. So although I do enjoy Christmas horror movies, this was not on the top of my list to do during a very busy week.
I would definitely watch it though. Something called Loudmouth.
Documentary about Al Sharpton, directed
Oh,
by Josh Alexander, who I believe is his second documentary and is also an actor.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, good title too.
Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical.
We would have seen a screener of this, but we were ill. So we'll have to wait because Netflix released it this week theatrically. I think it comes out on Christmas Day on their streaming platform. I was a fan of the book. I was commissioned to read this to my second grade class. So I have very fond memories of this book. And the original film with what's that little girl's name, Mara Wilson and Beth Davids, I remember being fine with, but the magic of Roald Dahl is usually in the written word. But and I'm not familiar with the musical because it's a Tony Award winning musical now. Blah blah blah. But I will see this. Lashana Lynch is the kind teacher, Miss Honey, so that's sweet to me. And Matthew Warchus directed it, who directed Pride, which we saw.
Lastly, To the End.
It's a documentary about a group of representatives trying to get the Green New Deal. It's directed by Rachel Lears, and notably from the previews, the most recognizable face, of course, is AOC.
Yeah, I watched the trailer. Okay. Oh gosh, sorry. Moving on to movies we watch for fun. The Kings of the World.
This won the San Sebastian Film Festival this past year, directed by Laura Mora Ortega, and I watched it because I had to interview her because it is Colombia's official submission for the best international features. Lovely director, lovely film, and I did like it.
All That Breathes.
I was trying to catch up on some documentaries for voting. This won a prize in Sundance and Cannes. You were in the room while I was watching. It was about those two brothers in New Delhi who are
Oh yes, about
watching
birds or something.
those black kites, and the pollution is such that these magnificent birds are like dropping dead out of the sky.
Yeah.
It has its touching moments. I thought it was a little bit on the dry side, but I'm also tired.
Oh. You said this title already. Gangubai Kathiawadi.
Gangubai Kathiawadi. It's the recuperation of a courtesan, a girl sold into prostitution who becomes a very notable madam in 1960s Mumbai. Yeah, very interesting. And I thought it was because you'd think it's not technically a Bollywood film, even though there are musical numbers. So it's kind of different for and outside of the usual mainstream Indian cinema that you might see. It premiered in Berlin, and I guess technically right now it's the most globally streamed Indian title
Mm.
on Netflix.
Lastly, we finished the Netflix series Wednesday.
Yeah, we did
Um, we talked about it in the live video for Village of the Damned, but
because
overall, I thought it was good.
mhm.
We were both not feeling well, so over the course of like 2.5 days, we watched all of it, and I liked it. And I would definitely watch if there's another season. Although we did say that we both agree that Christina Ricci is so great in the series. I don't like. I would have much preferred we had a version. I would have preferred this had been like Wednesday as Christina Ricci as Wednesday all grown up and what her life looks like now. I would have preferred that as the story. And
Yeah.
and then I thought it would be fun if maybe she had kids and they were normies and how she's balancing raising normies with being this sadistic person. But instead we got Jenna Ortega as like a
It's a petulant young woman.
and I thought she was fun. I think the first two episodes it was a little like unrelenting how cynical and
Well,
flat she is.
just a response to everything. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, it was a little much, but then she kind of warms up a little bit, and then they give her something to do beyond just being snarky. So I enjoyed it in the end. It does feel a little drawn out.
Yes, and I don't really like how the hide creature looks.
I'm surprised at how silly that creature looked.
Yeah, it looks like a big cartoon.
It's so silly that I almost think I'm supposed to like it because there's no because it looks so like cartoonish, but whatever.
And I do like Gwendolyn Christie.
Yes, she's very
She's
good.
the principal. I ever since seeing Peter Strickland's Flux Gourmet, I will often just randomly say Jan Stevens.
And every time you do, I'm confused.
Like this is Jan Stevens. I fucking love that.
Moving on to projects of interest, something called Blitz.
Something called Blitz, which it's going to be about guess what? The Blitzkrieg in London. Steve McQueen is directing, and it's going to star Sarah Sharonan and Harris Dickinson and Kathy Burke.
Mm. So unfortunately, there is an entry in the obituary section. What day was it that Kirstie Alley died?
Oh, I don't remember the day.
Oh,
I just remember how I felt.
I remember. How did you feel?
I mean, sad. All these. The we're all marching towards death, and then it's just like, oh, a ton of people from my childhood are now dying.
God. Yeah. So we, in honor of her life, we did.
In honor of her life. To be clear, I don't agree with a lot of the things that came out of this lady's mouth in the later part of her life.
Well, I don't know much.
But I always thought she was transfixing and beautiful, and I have fond memories of her screen presence. Even though my parents probably didn't even share that same sentiment, even though because of them I watched, I have very clear memories of being put to bed as a little kid and the Cheers theme because they could watch Cheers at night.
Yeah. But we did a live review of Village of the Damned in honor of her.
Yes.
Well, the category was her, and people voted for Village of the Damned. But same, I remember her from Cheers and Veronica's Closet, and I always thought she was a striking figure. Like she seemed like a bold, audacious lady.
Yeah.
And I do recall there being a lot of fodder regarding her weight, which as a young person felt so icky.
Yeah.
Like, as an adult, I understand why I think it's so icky that we focus on people's bodies. But as a kid, I remember just thinking like, it's so mean that everyone just talks about this lady and then she feels obligated to get on TV and reveal her bathing suit body. And so those are my memories. I know she was a Scientologist. I know she made some political comments that she then, I don't know, again, I like I mentioned on the video, I don't know enough about this lady to have an opinion other than I have fond memories of her on TV. And I remember thinking she was just fun to look at. And yeah, she had colon cancer.
Which I think from my understanding, it went pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's what got oh god, my mind, Chadwick Boseman among many, many people.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
cancer gets everyone.
And she was 71, so
She had a big life.
she did. It's just sad, but it comes for us all.
Yes. We need to take a quick break. All right. This week's selection was Nick's for the secret movie.
That's right.
Um, and it's related to a film we reviewed called Babylon. That isn't the video's not dropping, I think, for another week and a half.
Yeah, it doesn't the general public won't see the film until December 23rd. So who knows how this is going to be received.
But we will have two videos for Babylon because we recorded one several weeks ago after Nick had seen it and I had not. And then we recorded another one yesterday or the day before, I believe, because I had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But our secret film is referenced in Babylon. It's the 1952 American musical romantic comedy film directed and choreographed by Gene Kelly and Stanley Donen. It's called Singin' in the Rain.
Yay! Joseph has never seen this, and I thought that we needed to correct that because I thought you might appreciate, a little more, at least why I really I can feel the reverence in Babylon for this period.
Well, like you mentioned, I had never seen Singin' in the Rain, and I thought I would give it 5 out of 5.
I mean, it's excellent.
It's a masterpiece.
And
This is how you make a movie. Wow.
And I don't even like musicals, but I remember the first time I saw it was for a film class in 2006, and I remember even just dreading even as I put it on, and then it's movie magic.
Well, and my issue with Babylon is that it feels all over the place. It feels chaotic. These characters don't have any sort of interiority. And I think what I was going to say is this is how you make a movie like that, because the same is true for Singing in the Rain. It's just kind of chaotic. The story's silly. Like these silent film actors have to make a talkie, not unlike in Babylon, and the struggles they have with that. But it's very basic, and there are 4 main characters, not unlike in Babylon. But in Singing in the Rain, they're just these characters are written so well to aid sort of the plot moving forward and wrapping up this silly story, and it's so satisfying. But I mean, I just said the basic story. Gene Kelly and Gene Hagen play like silent film stars, and there's a movie called The Jazz Singer.
Yeah, Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer
that comes out, and it's a talkie, and it's like the hit. It's the hit of all of Europe and Cannes, and so
yes, Faye.
So the person who runs the studio that Gene and Gene work for is like, well, we need to make a talkie. But then we realize that while Gene Kelly's acting and is okay in the talkie, Gene Hagen's, her voice is, it almost feels like Jennifer Tilly in Bullets Over Broadway was copying Gene Hagen. Like she has a very high-pitched, nasally, annoying voice.
So or Judy Holliday, maybe even from Born Yesterday.
So of course that's not going to work. And then here comes Debbie Reynolds. And Gene Kelly and Gene Hagen are supposed to be kind of a couple, but clearly it's more for business. And when Gene Kelly meets Debbie Reynolds, he's like in love with her, and she's couldn't be cuter, couldn't be more adorable. Something that's very interesting is Debbie Reynolds' character has a beautiful singing voice, but her singing voice
is actually Gene Hagen,
which is funny because then in the end, so what happens is they decide, well, because they try to shoot the talkie and it's a nightmare. They show it to like a preview audience and it's like embarrassingly bad. So they come up with the bright idea that Debbie Reynolds will provide the singing voice and
they'll dub her.
They'll dub Gene Hagen with Debbie Reynolds' voice, but really it's Gene Hagen's voice, so it's like meta, but that works.
Yeah, and in the end, the
crowds love it.
The reveal,
and then so Gene Kelly sort of is holding it over Gene Hagen's head that like Debbie Reynolds is going to be the next new star, but Gene Hagen's not stupid. She goes to the press and tells everyone that that's her voice. So if the studio, tells the truth, they'll all look crazy. But in the final scene, they have the idea, because the audience wants to hear Jean Hagen sing because they don't ever want her to speak
Mhm.
because her voice is so terrible. But she's being real arrogant at this point and saying, like, I run this shit. So she gets on stage and starts talking to the audience, and they all start laughing, like,
Mhm.
WTF. So they have the bright idea of having her lip sync while Debbie Reynolds is behind the curtain singing.
Singin' in the Rain.
But their real plan was, as she's singing, they're going to pull the curtain and everyone will know. And they do. And of course, people love Debbie Reynolds. Uh, and
But that's what's a very interesting scene if you know the mechanics going on, where Jean Hagen's being like we're dubbing back to herself
right.
as the woman behind the screen is actually the one who's being dubbed.
There isn't anything about this movie I didn't like. Um, First off, so I know the name Gene Kelly because I recall Michael Jackson talking about Gene Kelly in
Sure.
interviews and saying how inspired he was by him, among others. But I never knew how dreamy Gene Kelly is.
Mhm.
He's very handsome. He just, yeah. I can't believe I didn't know
Well,
that that's what Gene
I think
Kelly
the only
looked
thing
like.
I've shown you starring him previously since we've been together is Xanadu, which is his last.
Oh,
That's
he's an
hard.
older man.
I think that's his last screen appearance, and that's hardly a testament to his ability.
And then his best friend in the film is played by Donald O'Connor.
As Cosmo Brown.
And I thought he couldn't have been more adorable. Like he's like his comedic acting, his facial expressions, he's so cute. He has the most big blue eyes.
And he plays the kind of character that I would think if you told me about him, I'm like, oh, I'd hate that. But you know,
No,
it
he's so charming. They're both, and when they're together dancing, I mean, they're just perfect. They're so cute. But it really is like a fan because oftentimes movies like this, like set in this era with white people, is
mhm.
always like, oh God. Because in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, like, they had slaves. They treated black people poorly.
Yeah.
So then I'm always mad. But this movie definitely took me out of that. Like it's just a fun, silly movie that's so well done. And it is chaotic the way Babylon is. Well, I mean, Babylon's aping off of this, but it just works so well. And there were times I was like, am I confused right now? Well, it
Yeah,
doesn't
like, no,
matter.
this is technically a fantasy sequence that's in the mind of Gene Kelly, that is not happening whatsoever.
But let me continue through my notes. So um I did think it was funny that Gene Kelly's wearing all of the
Oh,
makeup.
yes, the close-ups on him, it's like, "Oh,
He is
wow."
wearing so much, and it's funny because he's very handsome. So I don't know why they put all of the makeup. I mean, I know from when it was shot in the theater, like it was a different experience than now watching it on HD. But yeah, um, when Debbie Reynolds, so the way Gene Kelly meets Debbie Reynolds is because he's a huge star. He's walking around with his best friend, and a group of kids mob him and start like ripping at his clothes because
Yeah.
they say they want a souvenir.
Yeah.
And he like escapes, like he jumps on top of a trolley and jumps into a car, and the car is being driven by Debbie Reynolds, and we find out she is like a theater actor,
Mhm.
and she's acting real pretentious, and she's pretending she doesn't know who Gene Kelly is, and she is not feeling him at
No.
all. That's a really cute scene because he's so offended.
Mhm.
But then he ends up at a party later that night, and she's working it as
Chorus girl.
like a chorus girl.
She's the one that jumps out of the cake.
And Gene Hagen's character can tell that Gene Kelly kind of likes her. So they have a little incident where inadvertently Debbie Reynolds throws like a cake in Gene
Lena
Hagen's
Lamont,
character is
yeah.
Lena, throws a cake at her face. I thought that was funny. And of course, Gene Hagen's character gets Debbie Reynolds fired. But at the party, some executive is like, there's this new technology I want to show everyone, and everyone's kind of making fun of it, like who shows a movie at a party?
Mhm.
But it's like this man who looks like Vincent Price.
Yeah, he looks decrepit.
He looks
Mhm.
decrepit. I don't know why they chose him to be like the person showing what a talkie's like because he looks dead. But he's explaining like, I'm talking to you on video.
Mhm.
My voice was recorded and synchronized with this video. I thought that was so cute. Like them trying to explain the initial like of what a
And
talkie
people are
was.
still confused, like, "Huh?"
And then everyone's like, there's someone behind the screen talking, and
Nobody's gonna wanna see movies
no
with
one's gonna want to
sound.
see a movie with sound. Um, then we move on, and there, because Gene Kelly's talking to his best friend and kind of bummed out that, like, it was implied by Debbie Reynolds that he's not a real actor. And then the character's name is Cosmo. He does a song called Make 'Em Laugh.
Mhm.
And I thought that was so good.
Yeah, the physicality of
The
that.
physicality and like the way he moves his face, and it's really, really impressive.
Yes, and, he won a Golden Globe for this performance. No Oscar nomination. I believe Gene Hagen was nominated for an Oscar.
I mean, I think, yeah, there's so many good performances, but
And a very young Rita Moreno as Zelda Zanders pops
we
out.
only see her a little bit.
Yeah, she's usually on the sidelines, but she's the one that tells Lena Lamont what's really going on with the dubbing. But she looks great, and it's just funny because last week's film was The Ritz,
where she stars.
we're recuperating Rita's B-sides, but
so Gene Kelly and Gene Hagen have to take like voice lessons. And I really liked the voice coach for Gene Hagen. Who is that lady?
oh, I forget her name. You've seen her and
But
stuff.
she's like, remember, round tones.
Yes.
And that poor lady, she looks so frustrated because there's no way Gene Hagen's character is going to sound good. And then we get to Gene Kelly with his voice coach, and he's there with Cosmo. And then they do like a number just out of nowhere. But I think, you know, people who don't like musicals always say, "Oh, I don't like it." They just burst out in song randomly, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it is weird because a lot of musicals, it's not random. It's like pertinent to what's happening, but instead of saying the words, they're singing them. And sometimes I agree that feels awkward, but in this movie, it really is random. They just bust out into song, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's so good.
It's the voice coach is Kathleen Freeman, who you might know as Sister Mary Stigmata from the Blues Brothers.
She's really good in this.
She was around forever because she's also a Naked Gun 33 and a third, which is probably how I remember her face the most as an older woman. But
so we finally get to recording the talkie, and it does not go well because Gene Kelly's character is kind of rough around the edges, and then Gene Hagen sounds terrible, and then she's not speaking into the mic.
Oh, that's a great scene.
So the I don't know if it's the director or the sound person is getting so frustrated, and then they try different things like sewing the microphone onto her like dress, but then they can hear her heartbeat, and they like sew it to her shoulder, but then she keeps talking away from it. It's so good. And then when they play it for the audience, it's just like, oh, this is terrible. Like the very first scene is her walking, and she's like playing with her pearl necklace.
Yeah,
and all you hear is like the pearls clanking.
Because the Millard Mitchell is R.F. Simpson, the head of the studio, who's a very annoying character. But he's like, "What is there, a thunderstorm outside?"
And then watching the movie, I just thought, how does a movie that's 70 years old look and sound better than most of the shit I see today?
Well, I think it's the care and
it's the meticulous. Well, and then these studios had these sound stages with all the things they need, and then they had a system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nowadays, even a notable director nowadays doesn't have a team.
Yeah,
like there is no system to support these people, so they have to go out and find people. And as we all know, when you do something, I mean, just for instance, like doing hair that isn't at my chair, like the chair I work in every day. If you tell me go do hair in your fucking bedroom for you one Saturday, it's not going to be the same. It's awkward. Like I'm not accustomed to it. So I think, yeah, a lot of the things that get made today are just like these one-off things. Yes, people reuse people who they like to work with, but the environment's different. So I feel like this movie is a testament to like the studio era and how it was a machine, and you can see in the finesse of it all, and how smooth everything works, and all the bit players. Like, I mean, they're all top notch. Yeah, if you had to recreate this movie without any special effects because it's all practical.
Well, I think there was a care taken in everything. Everyone had to shine a little bit because I don't know, we watch a lot of stuff and it's like, well, this person has no screen presence for the most part.
That's what I was going to say for Babylon. It's like, so Brad Pitt's character in Babylon is supposed to be like the biggest
John
silent
Gilbert, Douglas
silent
Fairbanks. Yeah.
silent film star. And I think like in Babylon, they just hired an A-list actor.
Yes.
Um, who I do think Brad Pitt is like, he has a lot of
I think
charisma.
that's good casting.
It
Yeah.
is, but I mean, but I feel like it's solely relying on the fact that we're all seeing Brad Pitt on screen
Sure.
that it made it believable. But Gene Kelly, I mean, he's just like so magnetic on screen. He's also dancing and singing as Brad Pitt is not. And then like Debbie Reynolds, I mean, if I'm just comparing characters, like Debbie Reynolds being like, uh, I mean,
Well, Margot Robbie's more of like a Gene Hagen type in
right.
in Babylon than
Yeah, they aren't direct comparisons, but I just think like Margot, I did like her in Babylon.
I did too.
She's very watchable. It's a very different movie. It's much more dark,
Oh yeah, it's a nightmare really,
but I just think like all the players, even like Sid Charisse is in the
oh,
movie.
we didn't talk about that's one of my favorite scenes.
Well, I'm not done with
Okay.
the notes, but that can be the next one. Like, so then there's like
It's a fantasy sequence where
because they're redoing the movie. So the talkie they make is a disaster. So they have the idea that they're going to make it a musical and then of course dub over with Debbie Reynolds. And then we see some of the songs they plan on doing, and then the head of the studio goes, well, how are you going to end it? And Gene Kelly says, well, we were thinking about this random Broadway number. Like he goes to Broadway,
and
which makes no sense.
And we basically go into the mind of Gene Kelly, and
it's just this really fun, it's almost like they're in like a Casino Royale environment. Yes. And then while he's there, he sees Sid Charisse, who is stunning,
whose character does not have a name. She's just this dancer that steps out,
but she's just like, I mean, yeah, the minute we see her on screen, it's like, whoa. And then there's this really beautiful sequence where she's dancing with like this long
train,
like cape.
Yeah, more of a cape, and the wind is blowing.
And this very delicate fabric, and the cape is long. It reaches up to the heavens, and the wind's blowing, and the way it's choreographed and synchronized, it's just, I mean, it couldn't be more perfect. That's pretty amazing. And I just kept thinking, if they had to redo this movie shot for shot, no special effects, I mean, it would be a huge, huge, huge production.
Yeah.
And finding people who exude
the same level of charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent.
I mean, watching Gene Kelly and his name is Donald O'Connor.
Yeah.
Together. I mean, who would have that? I mean, and were those two guys even friends? Like, I would love to know their relationship because they seem like they were like twins.
Yeah, and then, synchronized. Yeah,
and then I bet you if we learned about the production, it's like those two barely knew each other. They met right when they both took the roles.
Yeah, I'm not sure,
or maybe not. Maybe they worked a lot together. But it's very evident that a lot of work went into those two seeming so synchronized.
I do know Gene Kelly was chased off to Europe. He had to discreetly go there because of course, fucking McCarthy during this era. And I recently learned, I think I referenced it because I talked about Marty, because I rewatched that. He was married to Betsy Blair at the time, which I think is really interesting.
When Lena, Gene Hagen's character, realizes what's happening about the dubbing, she says she gives an exclusive interview to every paper. I thought that was so funny.
She's actually very cute because you'd think you'd hate her, but she's actually kind of a lot of fun, especially when she's exchanging hate speak with Gene Kelly when they're filming that silent scene.
Yeah, that's a really good scene. And then in the end, when she's telling the studio head, like, I'm in charge, but I'm confused.
Oh, God, the studio head is such an idiot because he's like, I don't know what to do.
Well, yeah. And then she gets real lofty in her head, like, yeah, I'm in charge. I'm going to go give a speech. And they're all like, yeah, let her give the speech. Let her give the
then
speech.
She tells these people, like, we're so glad we could enhance your humdrum lives. It's like, bitch.
The only plot point that I kind of didn't like, that I thought was a little strange, is when the curtain is lifted and everyone sees Debbie Reynolds. And she runs. And I just thought, why did she run? She should have stood there and been like, yeah, it's me. I did all this shit.
She wasn't gangsta. She didn't know.
No, she wasn't. But then, of course, Gene Kelly stops her and tells the audience, like, she's the star of the show.
Well, remember, because she felt betrayed. She's like heartbroken there because she feels betrayed by Gene Kelly.
Well, they had to do that because they couldn't tell her what they were thinking in front of Gene Hagen. So, yeah, in the process, Debbie Reynolds Debbie Reynolds' character got all butthurt, but
And you'd think I wouldn't like Debbie Reynolds based on, you know, just it's kind of like that Doris Day thing. And like I was like the bad girl, and she never really was that. But this, Debbie Reynolds was not as notable in 1952. I mean, this is 5 years before something like Tammy and the Bachelor, which was a huge hit for her, and she kind of became the star that she is. Married to the tumultuous relationship with Eddie Fisher, among others.
Well, yeah, this is a 5 out of 5 masterpiece movie for me. I can't believe I had never seen it. I'll definitely watch it again. I would love to see it in the theater.
Oh yeah, I did, but no, I've been wanting to show this to you for years, and I guess this was on the heels of you seeing Babylon was probably a good time. Uh,
Yeah, I can see how the filmmaker Babylon was inspired by Singing in the Rain and was maybe shooting for something akin to that,
some
like the underbelly version of Singing in the Rain.
Well, yeah, because the transition to sound was rough for people. Garbo Speaks. Greta Garbo was one of the lucky ones. A lot of these people did not make that transition successfully. And at the Q&A I was at with Chazelle talking about how if you look back then, all these notable silent film personalities committed suicide in the late 20s because they just, well, the Great Depression was also sparked off, but yeah, it was rough because audience just didn't want to hear some of these people, and the style of acting was completely different. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Singing in the Rain can't really address that, but I do think it's interesting that Singing in the Rain was not this huge runaway hit, kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, where it would be years later that audiences would come to love and revere it. And I really think the same thing is going to happen at Babylon.
Yeah, you keep saying that.
Well, because it costs.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. No, I don't know. I did like that movie.
I did too, but I mean, it cost $90 million. I don't know who's going to run out and want to experience it per se, even though I think it swings. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but it's doing a lot, and I just feel like people are going to dismiss it, and in 20 years somebody's going to look at it and be like, he did a lot of actually really impressive things in it.
Sure. All right, what else you got? What would you give Singing in the Rain?
I 4.5 or 5. I'd have to think about it. What did I put on Letterboxd? I have to check.
What do you have going on this week?
This
What are we seeing? Avatar tomorrow. Well,
I've already
Nick
seen
already
it.
watched the new Avatar, but I'll be watching it tomorrow.
Yes, and I'm very excited to speak on that.
Oh God.
There's God, we've seen almost everything.
Also, it might be a light week for once.
It should. I think we're gonna watch something called The Almond and the Seahorse.
The Almond and the Seahorse.
I sent you a list of the last like 9 or 10 movies we have to watch, but that's one of them. I believe Charlotte Gainsbourg and maybe Rebel Wilson.
I don't need to watch that.
Oh, Charlotte.
I'll look it up.
We need to support Charlotte Gainsbourg, please. So that is coming out this week. There's a documentary you haven't responded to me for watching yet about Nelly and Nadine, about Lebesians. That documentary Wildcat, Puss in Boots. Oh,
the description for The Almond and the Seahorse says an archaeologist and an architect fight to reimagine a future after a traumatic brain injury leaves them adrift from the people they love. That sounds insane.
Strange.
Yeah, I do not.
I think
we'll see.
Oh, The Pale Blue Eye is probably one of the bigger ones we have to finish. You still need
with
to watch
Christian Bale.
Women Talking, and I'm very excited to show you Corsage with Vicky Creeps. That was one of the best things I saw at Cannes this year, and that has a release.
Oh, good. Anything else?
No.
All right, toodaloo.